Welcome to your weekly airplane news updates, the Christmas edition for this year, for 2021. And we're right here in front of our crackling fireplace. The first story this week is something that has to do with training, and we've talked about this before, with the FAA is not allowing certain types of training in certain types of airplane. Well, there's been an update, not really a good one. We'll talk about a crash, actually two different crashes, unfortunately, this week. The first one is a Gulfstream that crashed in the Dominican Republic, and then also a crash in Texas between a large Cessna and a Paraglider. And lastly, we'll talk about somebody who get caught using lasers and is going to be probably sentenced to a whole bunch of time. So, and then lastly, we'll have just a quick update on Christmas and the Pilot Institute. So let's get to it, and Merry Christmas. All right, the first story this week is something that we've been following for quite a while. And if you remember, the FAA came up with this interpretation of the regulation. And they said that somebody who's training in a non-standard category aircraft has to now get a LODA. It's a letter of deviation authority. And this made the process very complicated for people who wanted to provide training in, for example, old World War II aircraft. And the FAA kind of cracked down on this because there were a few entities that weren't really going by the book, and they were using loopholes. And so the FAA kind of closed the loopholes in a certain way. But really, when they did this interpretation of the regulation, it did a little bit more than what they were really expecting. So the bottom line is a lot of trainers now have to go through the LODA process, which unfortunately is very lengthy because, well, it goes at the speed of government. And these LODAs, the FAA administrators said they were going to try to give some relief in one of these bills. And the bill was called the Certainty for General Aviation Pilot Act of 2021. And unfortunately, it just got eliminated from the National Defense Authorization Act. And what it means is that, well, unfortunately, there's no relief right around the corner, even though it wasn't going to be right around the corner, but now it's even further. It's the next block over. There's no basically regulatory solution around the corner for this LODA issue. It's a lot of, you can follow what I'm going to say next, but it's too bad because I think this was absolutely unnecessary to a certain extent, and it's going to just create more paperwork for everyone, including the government, and not something that we like to see. So let's move on to the next story. All right, the next story this week is not so great. Unfortunately, there was a crash, Gulfstream. This is a G4 that crashed off the Dominican Republic. And everybody was killed on board. This was 7 passengers, 2 crew members, and it looks like they were attempting to make an emergency landing. And there was a flight from Santo Domingo to Miami, and unfortunately, they weren't able to make it to the runway safely. So we'll have more information on this as soon as it comes out from the NTSB. But the Gulfstream G4 is a large aircraft and doesn't really go down very often. So we hope to get more information on this to brief you guys on it, and maybe we can avoid another crash in the future. All right, the next story this week, unfortunately, is another crash, and this is a mid-air collision that happened just yesterday as we're recording this, and this is between a Cessna 208 Bravo and what is reported to be a Paraglider. Unfortunately, it looks like they get caught and they weren't able to see each other. And the ADSB track is showing that the Cessna 208 was actually flying at 4,800 feet, followed by a very steep descent, which is when, unfortunately, they hit the Paraglider. Neither of the pilots survived. The pictures are pretty gruesome, so we're not going to show the pictures, but there is a lot of damage on the ground. If you want to see the pictures, head over to the article here that we're putting in the links. This is not something that we hear a lot. Typically, paragliders are out of the way of most aircraft, manned aircraft. They're also pretty visible, so not sure what happened there. Hopefully, we get some information as well from the NTSB to figure out what happened exactly. So, all right, next story this week is a man is pleading guilty to lasering airplanes. We talk about this, unfortunately, quite on a regular basis because there are still people that are doing stupid stuff with lasers. Don't point a laser at an airplane. It's really that simple. I've never quite understood, I know I say this every time we talk about this, but I've never really quite understood what the joy is at throwing lasers at aircraft. But Between January and July of this year, there were 49 aircraft that reported being lasered just in the Memphis airport area. So in August, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation decided to fly an aircraft to figure out if they could find where this was coming from. And sure enough, as soon as they took off and started flying in that area, they found lasers, somebody pointing at a laser. So they sent a team that was on the ground, and they were able to catch the guy in his backyard that was using a laser. So he was promptly arrested. Now he faces 5 years in prison and actually $250,000 fine, up to $250,000 fine. So just a reminder, please, please, please don't shine lasers at airplanes or drones. Just a really terrible idea all around. All right. This is all I have for you this week. Merry Christmas. I hope you have a great holiday. Be safe, fly safe, and then we'll see you next week for the last episode of the season where we're going to do a recap of everything we've talked about. Fly safe.